Okay, well, so what I'm going to do is go back through the slides. So for those of you that might be listening to this on the recording, this session was set up to help anybody or to provide more information for anyone that's thinking about the thesis option for MAHEAL. You would have been part of the 2017 incoming cohort, or sorry, 2018 incoming cohort, and you may be interested in completing your program via thesis as opposed to the courses, the research papers. So just to kind of walk you through, all of the courses you've all taken 501 and 510, and you're now in the midst of 550. After this course, you will divide into your streams. Those of you going on to systems leadership, your 3 courses are here. Those of you going into specialization in international education stream is going through these 3 courses. At the end of these 3 courses, you would, if you were continuing through with the research paper route, you would join your full cohort again and complete the remaining courses, 560, 570, move into 506, which is essentially your research proposal course. And then you would move into 610, which is a 6-month course, very self-directed, and within which you will conduct your systematic lit review. So it is certainly research. It's secondary research, not primary, so you don't have to go through ethics for it. You are using publicly available academic peer review literature to conduct your literature review. So, and again, it's 6 months. It's very self-directed. And the intention is with pass, and you have a residency at the end of that course, within which you are expected to share your paper, your research paper, via a poster presentation with the cohort. If after the end of the specializations you decide that no, I would like to finish the MAHEAL program via thesis, then you have 2 more courses to complete. One is LRNT 600. Which is the research proposal course. That number may be changed by the time you get to the course. It will probably be 506, but that's just a side note. That course runs for the standard 9 weeks, and you will take that course to prepare a draft of your research proposal, and this will be for primary research. Upon the successful completion of that research proposal course, you will move into the thesis course, and that course carries a value of 12 credits, and essentially very self-directed. You would work one-to-one with a thesis supervisor who will guide you through the completion of getting you through the proposal stage, which for the most part you come from your research proposal having completed that, but it will need some touch-ups. You will need to get ethics approval through Royal Roads and any other institutions that you may be involved in your study. And then you complete your research, carry out your primary research. So that's usually entails quantitative, qualitative surveys, or both. It may or may not entail qualitative interviews as well, observations, depending on what type of methodology you're using. Then, of course, you will have, after the collection of data, you will have your data analysis, interpretation, and the writing of the thesis. And you have just under a year to do that, probably close to about 9 months. And then you would be defending it. First, you have to select an external reviewer who reads the paper and offers comment on whether or not the thesis should be accepted. Then, following that, you have, within 2 weeks of that, you have you have a defense, which would be comprised typically of your thesis supervisor and your thesis coordinator. They together, based on the feedback from the external reviewer as well, would determine whether or not your thesis either meets the requirements, exceeds the requirements, meets the requirements with minor changes, or major changes, or does not meet the requirements. So that's information that we can go over as you get closer to that point. But for the purposes today, what I want you to think about is you really have to be able to hit the ground running. Hence the application process for to see whether or not you're accepted into it. And we do that not to be exclusive, but to ensure that you're set up for success, knowing the tight timeline and knowing that it's really not the type of option that you can start and then stop, because you can't automatically fall back into your courses. You would have a chunk of time to wait to get back in sync with the courses that you did not take as a result of the thesis thread. So we look for, in the application, we're definitely looking for a strong academic background. So some sort of indication that in addition to your MAHEAL program, you've had experience or have completed something in an academic nature. So whether it's a degree, diploma, certificate, and possibly something that has involved research, whether it was primary, secondary, whether you were a research assistant, something that highlights your previous experience and knowledge and ability to conduct research. In your application, you want to highlight certainly anything that's pertinent to research and your work experience. You want to be very succinct in what it is you want to do with this research. You want to be able to very succinctly talk about the value, the need for your research and why, the value of that research, what you expect to be able to get out of it in terms of your objectives, and what exactly you're thinking about asking. So these are all indications then that you've thought through, at the very least, the need for, you're familiar with some of the literature, you've, there's something you're motivated by, whether it's your work, whether it's a previous research project, and that you've also been able to articulate a research question and probably ideally have broken that research question down into sub-questions. So you need to be able to have that before you even take the proposal course. If your application is strong, then we can have a conversation about that, and we would talk about what is the probability of you finding a thesis supervisor. Your thesis supervisors typically have to be Royal Roads University core faculty. They don't necessarily have to be in the School of Education and Technology, but ideally that sometimes works best. And you have to remember we're a small school, so that once somebody is carrying 1 or 2 thesis students, they're reluctant to take on more. You can have an external or a second committee member who is external to Royal Roads University, but somebody who holds a PhD, and somebody that, through CV has been able to validate that they have an area of expertise in your topic area. There's, a small honorarium paid to to second committee members, whether they're Royal Roads core faculty or not. I've often been asked, can Royal Roads associate faculty serve as second committee members? They can. They have to have their PhD, and again, have to be vetted by the thesis coordinator. The thesis coordinator right now for MAHEAL is yours truly. So once I, go through the application with you, if it's something that's doable, we've got a thesis supervisor, and you're set up for success, then together we would go through the next steps of securing that thesis supervisor, and your thesis supervisor would have to help you find a secondary research committee member or committee member. So you also want to obviously have given some thought to your methodology. What type of research are you doing? Is it going to be qualitative or quantitative? Is it going to be mixed? And you need to be able to demonstrate that you've got a solid grasp of that methodology, and why you're using that particular methodology. You want to, and this would have been part of informing your research question and the need for your research, you want to be able to cite or briefly describe some key references that are applicable to your topic and to your research question. And then there's additional bullets there for you to consider in terms of, talking or sharing with us what exactly your research or how exactly your research will contribute to the existing literature. What gap will it fill? What practices, policies could it possibly inform? What could it make better? Those sorts of things. And then, of course, your research list. So these are very, very general track timelines. They vary a bit. So right now we have, once you would be accepted into your, once you're accepted into the thesis and you begin your last research course, so the actual research course, the 10-month course, you usually finish your proposal course in August. So you would begin your research course and working with your thesis supervisor late August, early September. And these are some of the guidelines. Together you would identify a timeline that works for you, keeping in mind that, certainly by September, you want to have your committee formed and approved. And any reference to SharePoint here, what that refers to is that's the software that we use for you to upload your documents once they're completed. It's run through the research office. So, and there is, it's fairly self-explanatory, and we're here to help you with that, but don't be intimidated by that. Again, your next step is you want to make sure that you've got your proposal, you and your supervisor are happy with it, and you post it to SharePoint so that your second committee member can officially review it. And you want that in there and good to go no later than October 31st. You also want to make sure that you have ethics underway once your proposal is approved. And then once you get your ethics approval, you get hunting and gathering on that data. And you can see here that your data collection should be happening through the late fall, early new year, and you should be well into writing your first draft of your thesis. So in other words, you should be well into analyzing your data and starting to write it up by the middle of March. You want to have your edits and everything done and ready to go to your second committee member by the middle of April. You want to then have, upon your second committee member's approval, then you need to have your external examiner's approval, or at least sent by the middle of April, immediately following the second committee member. So something I've learned in walking students through this as their thesis supervisors, the external examiner, finding an external examiner, having them approved, and having them agree to take on that role in reviewing your thesis can really run up a lot of time. You don't need much to happen to end up having what could be a 3-week process turn into a 9-week process. The external examiner process involves you as the student and working with your thesis supervisor, identifying PhD, doctoral holding scholars in your topic area that you do not, as a student, have any informal or formal relationship with. It may be somebody that's in your network, but with somebody that you have not worked directly with, we need this person to be as objective as possible. You submit those names to your thesis supervisor. Your thesis coordinator then submits them to SharePoint, and the research office takes it from there. They contacted the external examiner. They secure the external examiner's agreement to review the thesis, and then the examiner has a 2-week period to do the review. So you can imagine if we do the waiting and find out that an external examiner is not able to do the review, we have to go back to the starting board and resubmit another name, and then the request goes out. So that's how I've seen students get weighed down in waiting, and it's idle time. Hence not wanting to wait. much longer than the middle of April to have that external examiner process underway. Ideally, you have your proposal, or you have your thesis back from the external reviewer by the middle of May. Any changes or edits you can work on. Once you have that, you set in place a date for your oral defense working with the research office. You would have ideally your oral defense in the first week of June. And following that, if there are any minor edits, you would work with your thesis supervisor to incorporate those and submit your final thesis by July 15th. So you can see that this is a very, very tight timeline. And again, to reiterate, this is why we ask students to apply for the thesis track. So there's, they've been able to really think through what it is they want to do, and they've been able to demonstrate, a fairly solid understanding of the research process and confidence in being able to do this. So those are your timelines. Again, everything, if you're thinking about the thesis, by all means, please contact me. I'm happy to chat with you about your application, about your idea. And if it's something that you're feeling fairly confident about, you want to apply now, and if it's approved, you still have several months before the research proposal course starts. So you still have that 27 weeks is what it's going to take you to get through your specialization stream courses. So I've had students be approved, and then during their HEAL 540 or 545, they say, you know what, listen, things have changed, I don't want to continue. So they pull out of the thesis track and they move back into the course track, and that is certainly doable. That happens. You will not, however, be approved for a thesis. If at that point you decide, nope, I'm going to do a thesis and I want to talk to Tamara or whoever about that and quickly change tracks now that I've completed 6 courses, that's not an option. Hence, and because we will not have had time to look for a thesis supervisor or to set you up for success. And this is all about getting you across the stage successfully in that 2-year time period. So that's essentially it. If you have any questions, please feel free to connect with me, and I would be happy to answer your questions, talk it through, and yeah, that's about it. So thanks so very much, and I hope this has been of value. Take good care. Bye.